Hi there, I'm Jerrel from Sungran, the developer of the Silver Falls games. So, I launched the very final games on the Wii U and the 3DS. The final games that launched on the Wii U are Silver Falls White Inside Its Umbra and Silver Falls Undertakers. And the final game to launch on the Nintendo 3DS was Silver Falls Deathly Delusion Destroyers. Before I go any further, I just want to thank you, personally, directly, thank you for supporting Silver Falls and for cheering me on over the past 12 months. Without the 3DS community, without the Wii U community, and especially without the Silver Falls community, I would not have been able to make it this far. So like the topic of the video says, how did I manage to make 6 video games in less than 12 months? Actually, in terms of development, I actually spent 10 months because the last 2 months were spent with the submission process. So I actually finished 6 games in less than 10 months. That was a grueling process. So, at the start of the process, I knew that it was going to be physically demanding as I had worked difficult work weeks before. Basically, for the entirety of the 10 months of development, outside of a couple weeks where I got sick and I lost very valuable time, I was working 130 hours a week. I slept very little, and I combined my living tasks with work tasks. I had 4 workstations open, and I was working on multiple games simultaneously. Sometimes when just focusing on one game, there were some weeks where I had to focus on just the one game at a time. For example, White Inside Its Umbra. I actually had multiple workstations open, and I was working across multiple workstations simultaneously. For the soundtracks for each game, generally I would do the entirety of the soundtrack within 2 days. Some games, for example, Ruby River, I did the entirety of the soundtrack in 1 day. White Inside Its Umbra took 2.5 days. Ghoul Busters took 2 days. So, for example, I had to work extremely quickly. Now, in order to survive and be able to physically handle that sort of workload, if you've never done that workload before, 130 hours a week, you could probably handle 1 week of that before your body starts telling you you need to stop and slow down. So usually before the start of this year, I have regular physical training, usually 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week, and that's just a lot of cardio, weightlifting, a lot of hiking, and other kinds of outdoor activity. So I knew that in order to be able to handle this workload, I had to sacrifice all of my physical training, any kind of social life that I just had to set that aside. So I wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't going out for dinner or lunch, I wasn't hanging out with friends, I wasn't buying any video games. All of the Silver Falls games are funded internally out of pocket. So all of my expenses go towards keeping the lights on in the studio. And that is why I'm so grateful for all of our patrons through Patreon who helped me keep the lights on, because it was an extremely difficult last 12 months. But it's thanks to our patrons I just barely kept the lights on in the studio, and I had to work as hard as I could to make sure that I don't let down all of these people that were actively supporting me and cheering me on. So I was able to coast on being in good physical shape for about the first 6 weeks, and then after that your body starts to shut down and tells you you can't keep doing this. So at that point you just need to maintain a resilient attitude, because you're going to get to a point where you will psychologically, you just feel like, well, you just understand you can't handle that workload anymore. So my approach was just to grit my teeth, to take a deep breath, and to keep breathing deeply, and to not panic. You don't think about what could go wrong, you just focus on the task that needs to be done. So that's how I worked for the past, it took me 10 months to develop the games, but it was very difficult in terms of doing the submission work and working with Nintendo overseas across different time zones. I often had to stay up the entire night in order to work with Nintendo, who are overseas. I live in Australia. So it was extremely challenging from that point. There was also the matter of promotional and marketing work, directly one-on-one with people, doing interviews. And there was also the matter of updating the game. So not only was I actively developing multiple titles simultaneously, I also rolled out the biggest and most significant update to 3 Down Stars version 1.69, which unfortunately was only able to roll out in North America. The timing didn't work out. I had submitted it to Europe, but unfortunately, due to the turbulence of world politics in 2022, all of our submissions unfortunately had to be canceled prematurely. So I do apologize to everyone in Europe who did want to support me. So that basically just explains how I worked is furiously. There were some nights where it was at 2 in the morning and I knew that I had to get at least 2 more hours of work done. And there were many points where I actually couldn't even see straight and I still had to work. Many nights when my deadlines were getting very tight and I had to get paperwork done and submissions done and sent to Nintendo, I got the paperwork very wrong. I botched up, I messed it all up because I was so exhausted I actually couldn't read the paperwork right. And it was at that point the staff at Nintendo actually basically just picked me up and carried me across the finish line. And they're not required to do that. It's not their responsibility. It's my responsibility to make sure that my submissions are 100% correct. So I'm so grateful to them. And without all those individual staff members at Nintendo, we would not have any of these Silver Falls games. Nintendo made it absolutely possible. I pushed myself too far, and this is not something that a solo developer should have attempted. I don't have anyone else working in the office with me. I don't have anyone else helping me with development. But I absolutely was not alone because Nintendo was 100% on my side. And without Nintendo, these games would not have launched. And it just comes to show that this is a workload and a demand that isn't a great idea. But I wanted to bring something positive to people so that we can all celebrate and feel great about the 3DS and Wii U. And I didn't want people to feel like this was something that we should be dreading. And so I hope that I've brought something positive and something worth celebrating to all of you. So that's how I did it. I developed multiple games simultaneously. I had to plan out which games could share assets. For example, White Inside Its Umbra, I knew there were characters that would appear in White Inside Its Umbra. So while I was preparing character graphics and environments in White Inside Its Umbra, I created them in a way that they would be reused in other titles, for example, Gaiden and Gaiden Deathly Delusion Destroyers. There were other titles like Guardians and Metal Exterminators, which had wholly original graphics, but I was able to use monsters from one game in another game. But for titles like Ghoul Busters, that one did not have any assets which could be shared across. So basically, I had to figure out which games could share assets and create the assets in a way that they could save me development time. So it really was creating multiple games at a time until I got to the last 20% of a game, and that's when I would lock down and just focus on that one game for a few weeks and have it totally as polished as it can be and finished. And that's how I did it. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to comment. And I hope you're looking forward to the future of Silver Falls. We'll be doing a bonfire on March 27th, so I hope you will be there for that. We'll be doing some content giveaways in-game via the code linker, and we'll be saying farewell to the 3DS and Wii U. So thank you very much for your support. Please take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon in Silver Falls.